Hey, what's up, guys? Soul Man with a big opinion here. So, I'm pretty sure most people have heard about the Russian drones going into Poland. Uh, I I heard about this story. So, I'm recording this at about 8 o'clock today, and I'd heard about this story at about 7:30 last night, and even then, I was about an hour behind. Uh, I was watching Timcast, and the information that was available at the time, I don't think was good enough to really discuss it. Uh, there was lots of there was lots of what ifs, why it happened, was it an accident, was it on purpose, and the most recent thing is from 22 minutes ago. Russia says it had no intention to engage with Polish targets overnight. Uh, This is after the NATO member says it downed several Russian drones that breached its airspace. This is from the Russian Defense Ministry. Uh, Also, without confirming or denying that its drones had entered Polish airspace. Uh, we are ready to hold uh, meetings on this subject with the Polish Defense Ministry. Um, there's videos of them shooting down Russian drones. 8 hours ago, Ukraine Foreign Ministry called for a strong response. Um, they also reopened the airport 8 hours ago. 7 hours ago, so for me, this is 1 a.m. in the morning. Drone interception operations have ended. Airports reopened in Warsaw, uh, Molden, and I'm not going to try to pronounce it, Reslov. I should probably get better at some of this. Zelensky says Russia attack an extreme dangerous precedent for Europe. Polish airspace was violated by a huge number of Russian drones. EU must develop a drone wall. Poland's ready to react. 6 hours ago, so this is 2 a.m. for me, Russian drones enter European airspace, likely intentional. NATO to discuss drones entering Poland during its regular meeting. Zelensky saying deliberately targeted. Zelensky says Poland deliberately targeted in Russian attack. Polish president calls the Security Council. Dropped y'all. Security Council over 48 hours. Macron, the French president, calls it simply unacceptable. There's a briefing at about 3 a.m. with the Polish parliament. They say that there's 19 violations of Polish airspace. Poland to invoke Article 4 of NATO, which basically says, we're going to meet with the other people and decide what we're going to do. The prospect of military conflict is closer than at any time since the Second World War. Poland summons Russia after overnight drone attack. European leaders express solidarity with Poland. This is 4 a.m. for me. Egregious and unprecedented. 7 drones remains of missiles found so far. 2 dozen drones may have entered Poland. This is at 5 a.m. At 6 a.m., an expert says Russia may be trying to test where NATO red lines are. Full assessment is ongoing. The Kremlin declines to comment, refers question to Russian Defense Ministry. Unprecedented attack. We start getting pictures in about 2 hours ago. An hour ago, they are saying that they were clearly set on this course. 27 minutes ago, Russia says it has no intention to engage with Polish targets overnight. And 23 minutes ago, U.S. will defend every inch of NATO territory. That's a fast 6-minute timeline. That's from The Guardian. Every single group has news articles. CNBC had theirs out 5 hours ago. Reuters is 58 minutes ago. BBC's an hour ago. I also wanted to talk about the stuff going on in Nepal. From my understanding, 19 protesters have died from clashing with the police. They're burning down government buildings. They're doing the American equivalent of tarring and feathering politicians. Their idea is stripping them down and throwing them in a river. From what I saw, it's not a very deep river. I think it's more symbolic. The Prime Minister's wife was murdered. 27 looters have been arrested. Fire was set to a prison. Tens of thousands of protesters remain on the streets. And this is all coming from a social media ban. A bunch of people are saying, is this a political uprising? Is this the idea of a protest and it's going to die out? What is the government? The army, this article is saying the army is attempting to restore order. So we have that going on. And, in boring news, we're under another water boil. Went to our city hall meeting, and they essentially said there's probably going to be a boil water notice every month. This is what I get for not keeping up with stuff, but they are replacing massive amounts of our water infrastructure. They're saying that some of it is 75 plus years old. They've been able to use ground scanning technologies and have basically found several places where it's leaking. The hope is they fix it now. We don't have to worry about it for another 7,500 years. They're repairing roads and things like that. So when they fix the water pipes, there's going to be 12 to 24 hours of a boil water notice, whether repressurizing the system and flushing it. Other news, there's nothing like super special going on. Midterms are starting to ramp up. new ICE crackdowns in big cities are starting. I started with the one in Poland because, that's international. It is, involving a NATO country. The U.S. should respond in some form or fashion. I also talked about a few weeks ago, Poland in the next like year or 18 months is going to be the strongest military force. Uh, Definitely in Eastern Europe. Definitely out of the NATO countries in Europe. They're going to have something like 1,180 tanks, which, compared to some of the bigger countries like the U.S. or Russia or China, they're still playing catch up. But they will have more tanks than Britain, France, and Germany combined. Uh, Germany is doing very well with their Leopard 2 tanks, but they're selling more of them and producing them for other countries than they are holding on to them themselves. One thought process with this is there's a lot of buildup happening, so the next major conflict is it's gonna get spicy. Uh, I've looked at a lot of the new U.S. technology, and then there was the parade in China with their new stuff. Haven't really heard of new stuff out of Russia in a while. Uh, but if the governments of the world are increasing their military budgets, then so should we as preppers. Um, I've started recording some stuff for me to start reloading. I got all my grandpa's reloading stuff when he passed. He was very big in it in the late 90s, early 2000s. He continued to purchase reloading stuff for the last 25 years. I was in his life for 26 years, and I don't think he ever reloaded anything when I was alive. Uh, if he did, it was when I was like 5 or under. There is a lot of stuff. I got a Dillon 550. I got a Lyman. I know it's like a single press, but it has the rotation, so you can at least do the entire process. Come down, rotate, come down, rotate. It does all the steps. And then he does have a single stage where you have to change out the dies. So you do all of one step for everything that you want to do. You change it out, you do all the next steps. It's a fairly nice investment. Discussing with my brother, the plans, really the only thing I need to make like 100 5.56 rounds is powder. Really the only thing I need to make probably 1,000 9mm rounds is powder. That's the one thing I tossed out. I mean, he had one bottle labeled from 2001. It was open. It looked fairly chunky. I didn't want to mess with that. It's also really interesting seeing a box of bullets for $11.95. Looking at the price of it today being $54.99. So there's a good investment there. Now I'm just in the process of I have to clean so much of it. The nicest stuff, the most well kept stuff is just dust and relubing. But there was 3 die sets. There were three die sets that were fairly rusted. Um, I'm still, I soaked them in WD-40 last night. I'm pretty sure I'm gonna have to get some like Evapor Rust. I tried getting that yesterday and it wasn't on shelves. So I have to order it online. But I didn't want to have to wait for it to come in to start trying to clean them. So I put them in some Tupperware containers, WD-40, waited 5 or 6 minutes, and started getting some of the rust off. And at least what I can tell for now, um, it's surface rust. It's not going to affect the dies. Uh, thankfully there were three sets, and one looks immaculate. There's a lot of sets for firearms that he owns, uh, and there's some sets for stuff that I think he bought it to buy it. Uh, you know, I'm definitely gonna purchase the new caliper. The one he has is just the old dial, and while that will work just fine, I want a digital one just to make sure 100% everything is the way it needs to be. I get paid at the end of the month, so I've got to wait for that. But just doing a stock of what is there, it's a several $1,000 investment that he made. Then multiply that by 25, 30 years, and generational wealth is a thing. Um, Reloading wasn't, it's on my prepping list, but from a budget standpoint, um, it's much further down on the list. My priorities are, in other places at the moment. But that being said, if I really only need powder and, you know, thankfully I've kept all of my cases, since I started shooting, uh, it's moving up on its priority list. If I'm putting in resources to be able to create more rounds, I think it's making yourself more self-sufficient. Um, I am still purchasing food. I am still cleaning up the backyard. On Sunday, I am, building more of the run for the chicken coop. Um, I'm putting some of my own personal, you can call it my GDP if you want to. And my defense budget is, probably a higher percentage than the government. If you're a prepper, I think you should do the same thing. I also updated the video 10 minutes ago. Putin hits new level of hostility against Europe, UK defense minister says. Asks UK armed forces to look at bolstering NATO air defense over Poland. So, this is developing in real time. I think more sanctions will come out of it. I think this might, in my opinion, it would turn into a 3 strikes and you're out. I think it was done purposely. I think it was done to just kind of see how the West would respond. On the surface, I don't see the benefits that Russia has in doing this. Uh, Unless they've counted their cards and they think China's going to help them, if they think uh, North Korea will help them, are they weighing how much we can gain from this kind of fight? There's not a lot to know currently. Um, I think it would be a long and brutal amount of fighting if it actually started. The things that I am more worried about, not I mean the kinetic conventional warfare will be terrible. Um, I think most of the fighting would end up happening in Poland, at least on the ground. I don't think Russia has the capabilities of, you know, these large territorial gains like World War II. I don't think Poland would be overrun. I don't think Finland would be overrun or anything like that. What worries me more in something like this is the technology of today, you know, getting access to a infrastructure system and turning off a simple step, reversing something like your water supply. If they turned off the system that cleaned the water, that's a simple way of thinking about it, to where it still looks clean, but there is bacteria and other things in there that we can't see. That happens in a treatment facility that treats 50,000 people. Let's say 20% of them drink water that makes them sick. They're not going to know that the water coming out of their tap is bad. Someone will eventually figure out about it, but that is thousands of people now sick. Now multiply that by, dozens, if not hundreds, of treatment plants that go through this. Shutting down, parts of the internet. It's already a pain in the butt if, the gas station that you always go to, their card reader's down. I keep $20 or $30 in cash so I can still get my Monster and a little bit of gas that I planned on getting. But, that disruption in commerce, how many of those people now have to, even if they're spending 10 more minutes to go somewhere else to get fuel, they're probably spending more money, because most people I know go to the gas station with the cheapest fuel. And, let's say it was 60 people and you wasted 10 minutes of their time. That is 10 hours of productivity lost at one gas station. Having electrical issues when it's super, super hot or super, super cold. You've lost power to your house. I made a very quick prepping purchase in buying a generator to run an AC when my wife was 8 months pregnant in June in Texas. I'm not saying, she would have died from that. I think we could have made it through. Very uncomfortable. We did breastfeeding, so anything extra probably would have gone bad if we weren't running a mini fridge and an AC. Multiply that by the probably tens of thousands of different things that can be sabotaged. And it turns into a very real issue on the home front without munitions being shot. They can mess with your money. There's a lot that can happen in today's warfare that can make life more miserable. I've seen Walmarts, lose power for whatever reason, and I don't remember the timeline on it, but I do know, uh, after a certain number of hours, they have to start throwing produce out. All right, 4 minutes ago, police officers standing near drone fragments. It's a pretty good sized drone. I'm a short dude. The guy in this picture is probably 5'10". This drone's almost as tall as he is. Destroyed roof of a house, so that's tens of thousands worth of damage there. Those are the three things. They've updated it with 3 pictures. They got some Polish soldiers standing in the road. There's a destroyed house, roof, drone fragments, and drone fragments. So, that drone is probably a tenth of the price of the roof that was destroyed. It's not, a world-ending thing. But drones are definitely a part of the future. Russia and Ukraine have proven the capabilities of drones for reconnaissance, infancy. It's an asset, and it's used to take out infantry. I watched a video where U.S. drone operators were specifically training on launching the drones inside the hatches of armored vehicles, or specifically launching them at tracks and weak points to disable the vehicles. It's probably not the best thing that a couple $100 drone can take out a multi-million-dollar piece of equipment. Whether that's completely taking it out because you went into the hatch, or at least, crippling it by taking a track out. So we'll see how these things go. There's going to be more updates throughout the day. This article update from Washington Post is from 11 minutes ago. If there is more pertinent information, leave it in the comment section down below. Subscribe to the channel to continue to get the most up-to-date news from a prepper's perspective and how I'm going to respond to it. Subscribe to the channel, like the video, share it with everyone you know. And with that, I'll catch you on the next one.